Hello, hello. Hi, gang. How about those Florida Gators? I'll tell you something funny or not so funny about that in just a minute. Get lucky in no time at Parks Casino Shippensburg, exit 29 off Route 81 in central Pennsylvania. Parks Casino really is my casino of choice. Take my recommendation and check out all the action, the entertainment, the excitement that they have to offer. Parks Casino Shippensburg in central PA, 100% smoke free, less than an hour from Harrisburg State Capitol, 500 state of the art slot machines, 48 live dealer electronic table games featuring blackjack and roulette, plus a great daily happy hour and the award winning Liberty Bar and Grill. Every Friday night, comedy night, Mark, Rick, and Donna from the USO Comedy Tour headlines this Friday night. That's cool. Live music every Saturday night in the side pocket. Get out and mingle in Shippensburg at Parks Casino. The duo Newman Day takes the stage in the side pocket this Saturday night. Parks Casino Shippensburg celebrating military veterans every Monday. Show your ID, get a free hot dog lunch with chips and soda. Thanks from Parks Casino for your service. Then every Tuesday, it is the 50% golden discount. Enjoy a 50% discount, 50% at Foodies inside Parks Casino. They've got it all going on. Get in on all the action. Parks Casino Shippensburg. Visit parkscasino.com. Got to be 21. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Well, my friends, I am nothing if not consistent. Did you watch last night? Because my streak continued. In fact, my streak began at the beginning of the tourney and went right to the end. Let's see. I began with the Lehigh ladies. Then I had the Johnnies, St. John's. Then I shifted my allegiance to Auburn. Okay, that was, I think, a tip of the hat to Sir Charles. And then I had been in Texas this year. I'd been in San Antonio, not quite Houston, but San Antonio. I went all in on Texas. And of course, it ends up being the Gators. Dateline San Antonio. What an exciting game. Listen to this synopsis if you missed it. In Monday night's national championship game, nothing was going right for Florida. They trailed or were tied for all but 64 seconds of the game. That's amazing. Their best player, Walter Clayton Jr., didn't score a single point in the first half. Out of nowhere, everything clicked at just the right time. Clayton returned to form, and with the swish of 2 free throws with 46 seconds left to play, the Gators cemented a stunning comeback from a 12-point deficit in the second half to beat Houston 65-63. My heart breaks. You hate to see somebody lose a game like that. For most of the night, that result seemed improbable in the extreme. It just wasn't that Florida had their shots blocked and their passes stolen by Houston's fearsome defense. It was that Clayton took 25 minutes to even register on the score sheet. So congrats. Exciting, exciting stuff. All right. Yesterday's poll result, 37,000. Thank you. 612. Will the Dow Jones Industrial Average close higher or lower this Friday than it did last Friday? And last Friday, it closed at 38,314.86. Remember, I didn't want to get into the whole futures game. So I said, here's where it closed last Friday amidst all the tumult. The tumult which caused me to say to Peter Navarro, it's all hit the fan when I interviewed him last Saturday morning. And he said, what are you talking about? So I wanted to know if you think at the end of this week we'll be higher or lower than we were at the end of last week. And 80.23% yesterday said lower. And I think you're wrong. I believed it yesterday and I believe it today. Why do I feel that way? I feel that way because I think Trump is buckling. And I don't believe, and I'll get this to today's poll question in a second, I don't believe Peter Navarro saying that there's no negotiation. I think they're buckling and there are negotiations and that there ought to be negotiations and that the markets are responding. Here's what's going on around the globe. And gang, I don't want to misrepresent myself. This is not my strong suit. But it's becoming more and more my strong suit because I'm so panicked. World shares and U.S. futures advanced on Tuesday, led by gains in Tokyo, where the Nikkei 225 shot up over 6% as markets calmed somewhat after the shocks from President Trump's tariff hikes. By the way, why was Nikkei up? Nikkei was up because Japan is in a negotiation with the United States. The modest rebound for most markets followed a wild day on Wall Street. Early on Tuesday, the Chinese Commerce Ministry said that it would fight till the end. Trump responded by saying there'll be another 50% of tariffs. But back to the point of Nikkei is up. Germany's index gained 0.9%. The Parisian index was up 1.3. Britain's FTSE also picked up 1.3. As I speak, because I'm in real time and, all of this is in a very fluid state of affairs, but the Dow futures are way up as well. Stock futures bounced Tuesday in a slight reprieve from the market turmoil sparked by President Trump's tariff rollout. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rebounded 1,024 points, or 2.6%. Futures tied to the S&P 500, up about 2.3%. NASDAQ's 100 futures gained 2.1%. So fingers crossed that there's a rebound in the market today. If the world markets moved mostly positively on Japan having dialogue with the Trump administration, does that mean that we are in a negotiation phase right now? Well, Peter Navarro, who I spoke a great deal about yesterday, he's been everywhere, apparently now with a split with Elon Musk, but still the president's point person relative to trade and tariffs, wrote for the Financial Times, and I read his essay, but I just want to single out the most significant part, at least according to me. Quote, this is Navarro writing yesterday. Trump's reciprocal tariff doctrine does exactly what the WTO, World Trade Organization, has failed to do. It holds foreign countries accountable. The U.S. will now match the substantially higher tariffs and crushing non-tariff barriers imposed on us by other nations. This is about fairness, and no one can argue with that. Now, the emphasis, mine. This is not a negotiation. For the U.S., it is a national emergency triggered by trade deficits caused by a rigged system. I don't believe that. I do not believe that. I think that it is a negotiation. Yesterday in the Oval Office, I watched the entire presser of President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and he asked whether the tariffs are negotiable or here to stay. And President Trump said, well, why can't both be true? And the significance of whether the U.S. is prepared to change course, that was shown yesterday when there was false news, a fake story that circulated mid-morning that there was going to be a pause called in tariffs. And what happened on trading floors when that news broke? There was cheering. So if you need any better indication of how the market wishes that this were not the case, you got it yesterday with the cheering. From CNN's reporting, an errant post on X may have shaken the stock market, showing how influential and unreliable the social media platform can be. Further along in the story, the false posts may have originated from a real Fox News interview with National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett. He was asked whether President Trump would consider a 90-day pause in tariffs, and he replied in part, the president is going to decide what the president is going to decide. And from that word salad, reporters started whispering down the lane, and it became one of, well, did you hear? Kevin Hassett said there's going to be a pause for 90 days. And based on that news, quote, at about 10:12 a.m., CNN's Vanessa Yurkevich was on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, said that cheers had broken out as stock indices, which were suddenly recovering from early morning lows, surged. But then things reverted, and it ended up being a down day, albeit not as down as it has been. I'm asking today in the poll question, are President Trump's tariffs a permanent fixture of his trade policy or primarily a negotiating tactic? As I said yesterday in the Oval Office, when President Trump was asked, he said, they can both be true. There can be permanent tariffs and there can also be negotiations because there are things that we need beyond tariffs. So it's totally conflicting information. On Monday, you had Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent sharing that he was in a negotiation with Japan. Meanwhile, Peter Navarro, who I've referenced, said this is not a negotiation. Um, who else? Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick on the Face the Nation program on Sunday morning said tariffs were going to stay in place for days and weeks. This is policy. Meanwhile, the aforementioned National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett on ABC News this week boasted that 50 countries had already reached out to the United States to negotiate. Well, why are you touting that fact unless you're responding to their phone calls? From page 1 of the Times today, above the fold, President Trump's plan to impose tariffs on most of America's trading partners has governments across the globe racing to schedule negotiations and send delegations to Washington and offer up proposals to lower their import taxes. On Monday, European officials offered to drop tariffs to zero on cars and industrial goods imported from the United States in return for the same treatment. Further along in this same story, Mr. Trump and his advisors have given mixed signals on whether the United States is willing to negotiate. And then they go back and they repeat some of what I've already told you. So that's what I'm asking today. I'm asking, are these policies permanent or a negotiation? I haven't peaked since I voted early this morning. And when I voted early this morning, I voted they are a negotiating tactic. Interestingly, when I voted, and we'll be over 30,000 votes on this, but when there were only 308, because I was number 308 today, the margin was 50.32 to 49.68. And I love seeing that. I have no idea whether that margin will hold or whether it will expand. Frankly, as the day progresses, if it goes the way that I think it's going to go, I think reports will break of other nations now being in negotiations. But maybe I'm wrong because, as I told you, it's not my strong suit. Please go vote on today's poll question at Smerconish.com. Are President Trump's tariffs a permanent fixture of his trade policy? Is this the way it's going to be? Or is this the art of the deal? According to Trump, is this primarily a negotiating tactic? We've had huge voting at Smerconish.com in the last several days, the last several weeks, the last several months. Thank you for that. Make sure you're voting on today's poll question. And like and subscribe, please, and set yourself up for notifications as well. Okay, gang? Thank you. Appreciate all of you.